The Coffee Shop Encounter. The morning rush at Brew and Soul was precisely controlled chaos, and Natalie Brooks thrived in the center of it. Her dark curls were pulled back in a messy bun, her apron already stained with espresso and foam art attempts, and her smile never wavered, as she juggled orders with the grace of someone who genuinely loved what they did. "Good morning, Mrs. Chen," she called to the elderly woman shuffling through the door, already reaching for the chamomile tea and honey. "Your usual spot by the window is open. I saved it just for you." The woman's face lit up like Natalie had offered her the world instead of just a seat. "You're a treasure, dear." "Just doing my job," Natalie laughed. But they both knew it was more than that. She remembered every regular's order, asked about their families, celebrated their victories, and mourned their losses. Brew and Soul wasn't just a coffee shop under Natalie's care, it was a community. The door chimed again, and Natalie glanced up to greet the newcomer. Her practiced smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. The man who entered looked like he had wandered in from a different universe, one made of steel and money and cold calculation. His navy suit was perfectly tailored, his dark hair styled with precision, and his jaw was set in a permanent line of disapproval. He checked his expensive watch with the air of someone who measured life in billable hours. Damian Cross had 17 minutes before his next conference call, and his driver had suggested this coffee shop as the quickest option. Looking around at the mismatched furniture and chalkboard menu, Damian suspected it had been a mistake. But he was here now, and caffeine was non-negotiable. "Good morning, sunshine," Natalie greeted him with her usual warmth, grabbing a mug. "You look like you could use something strong and maybe a reason to smile." Damian's gray eyes lifted to meet hers, and Natalie felt the full force of his attention. It was like being assessed by a computer, cold and analytical. "Large black coffee," he said flatly. "Large black coffee for the man with the large black cloud over his head," Natalie quipped, pouring with a flourish. "Though I have to warn you, our coffee is locally roasted and contains trace amounts of joy. Might conflict with your whole vibe." "Excuse me?" Damian said, the word sharp. "Your vibe. You know, the whole 'I'm too important to be bothered by human interaction' thing." Natalie handed him the mug with a grin that was completely unrepentant. "Don't worry, it looks good on you. Very intimidating businessman. 10 out of 10 would be scared to ask for a raise." Despite himself, despite every instinct that told him to shut this overly familiar barista down, Damian felt something crack in his chest. "Are you always this inappropriate with customers?" "Only the ones who look like they've forgotten how to have fun," Natalie leaned against the counter. "So yeah, pretty much always with guys like you. What do you do that makes you so serious before 8 in the morning?" "Real estate development." "Ah, so you destroy things for a living. That explains the permanent frown." "I don't destroy, I build." Damian corrected, irritated, but also somehow engaged. "I create spaces for businesses and families." "By tearing down what was there before?" Natalie pointed out, but her tone was curious rather than accusatory. "Must be hard, being the bad guy in every neighborhood story." The observation was more perceptive than Damian expected. He found himself studying her more carefully. She had warm brown eyes that seemed to see straight through his defenses, and despite the coffee stains on her apron, she carried herself with unself-conscious confidence. "I'm not the bad guy," he said quietly. "I'm practical." "Practical is just another word for 'I've given up on magic,'" Natalie replied, then laughed at his expression. Sorry, I know, too much philosophy before breakfast. Want anything to eat, or are you too practical for pastries?" Damian should have said no, should have taken his coffee and left. Instead, he heard himself say, "What do you recommend?" Natalie's face lit up like he'd given her the best gift. "Oh, you've made a terrible mistake asking me that. I have opinions, so many opinions." She grabbed a plate and began assembling items from the display case. "Okay, so this is our cinnamon roll, made by our baker Sophie, who is basically a wizard. This croissant is from the French place down the street because I refuse to compete with perfection. And this is my own creation, a maple bacon scone that sounds weird, but tastes like autumn had a baby with happiness. She set the plate in front of him, and Damien stared at the ridiculous abundance. This is too much food. Which is why you'll share it with me during my break in approximately 4 minutes. Natalie checked her watch, unless you're too important to eat with the help. It was a challenge, delivered with a smile, but a challenge nonetheless. Damien should have said yes. He was too busy. Should have paid and left and never returned to this chaotic little shop with its overly cheerful barista. I have a meeting in 15 minutes, he said. Perfect, Natalie replied. I can change your worldview in 12. She bounded away to help other customers, leaving Damien sitting at a small table near the window with enough baked goods to feed a family. He checked his phone, reviewed emails, tried to focus on the contracts that needed his attention, but his eyes kept drifting to Natalie as she moved through the shop. She knew everyone's name. She laughed at terrible jokes. She high-fived a small child who was proudly showing her a drawing. She moved through the world like it was designed specifically for her to bring light to every corner. 4 minutes later, she slid into the seat across from him, grabbing the maple bacon scone. Okay, speed round. Tell me 3 things about yourself that aren't related to work or money. Damien blinked. What? 3 things. Go. Unless work and money are literally all you have, which would be sad but probably accurate given the vibes. I don't have to tell you anything, Damien pointed out. Nope, you sure don't, Natalie agreed cheerfully, taking a bite of scone. But you're still sitting here, which means part of you wants to. So, go ahead, surprise yourself. Damien found himself answering despite every logical reason not to. I read poetry, 19th century mostly. I run every morning, and I hate the opera, but I go anyway because my mother loved it. Natalie's expression softened. Oh, he said quietly, that's actually beautiful. Poetry and running and honoring your mom. See, you're not just a practical robot. You're a human with feelings and everything. Damien felt exposed in a way he hadn't in years. Your turn, he said, deflecting. Easy, Natalie grinned. I bake when I'm stressed. I'm putting my younger brother through college, and I believe every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, so I try to be kind to everyone. That's very optimistic. That's very practical, Natalie corrected, echoing his earlier words. Kindness costs nothing and returns everything. You should try it sometime. Damien's phone buzzed with a reminder about his meeting. He stood, leaving cash on the table that was far more than the coffee and pastries cost. I need to go. Of course you do, Natalie said, but she was smiling. See you tomorrow, Damien. He froze. I didn't tell you my name. You didn't have to. Guys like you are always named something powerful. Damien, Dominic, Alexander. I guessed Damien based on the poetry thing. Am I right? He was, and that unsettled him almost as much as everything else about her. How did you know I'd come back? Because you've been unhappy for so long that you forgot what genuine human connection feels like, Natalie said simply, and now you've remembered, even if just for 12 minutes, you'll be back. Damien left without another word, walking into the Chicago morning with his mind spinning. He had a major presentation, dozens of employees depending on him, an empire to maintain. He should be thinking about quarterly projections and zoning regulations. Instead, all he could think about was a barista with coffee-stained hands and a smile that seemed to warm the entire world from the inside out. He told himself he wouldn't return, told himself she was chaos and unpredictability and everything he had carefully eliminated from his life. Told himself by tomorrow he would have forgotten her completely. But at 7:45 the next morning, Damien found himself walking through the doors of Brew and Soul, and Natalie looked up with a grin that made his carefully controlled heart skip a beat. Knew it, she said, already pouring his coffee. Welcome back, sunshine. Ready to work on that smile? And despite everything, despite all his walls and defenses and reasons to stay away, Damien found himself smiling. Just a little. but it was a start. Walls coming down. 3 weeks of morning visits turned into daily necessity for Damien. He arrived at Bruin Soul before meetings, rearranging his schedule around 7:45 coffee with Natalie. Their conversations deepened, moving past surface pleasantries into real connection. "I was engaged once," Damien admitted one morning when the shop was quiet. "She left when I lost my first major deal. Said she didn't sign up to be with someone who might fail." Natalie reached across the table, touching him briefly. "Her loss. You're better off without someone who only loved your success." "What about you?" Damien asked. "Why are you working here instead of pursuing your own dreams?" "Because dreams require money I don't have," Natalie said simply. "My brother—"
The devastating truth. The email arrived on a Thursday morning while Damien was reviewing quarterly reports. Subject line: Riverside Expansion Acquisition Confirmed. He opened it absently, then felt his blood turn to ice as he read the addresses of newly acquired properties. Among them, 847 West Randolph Street, the address of Bruin Soul. Damien immediately called his acquisitions director. "When was this purchase finalized?" "3 days ago, sir, as per your approval on the Riverside expansion budget." "I didn't see the specific addresses." "They were in the appendix, page 47, standard due diligence. We're scheduled to begin demolition in 60 days to make way for the luxury apartment complex." Damien ended the call with shaking hands. He had signed the papers, approved the budget, authorized the destruction of the one place that had given him back his humanity, the place where Natalie worked, where she had built her community. He had to tell her, immediately. When Damien arrived at Bruin Soul that afternoon, Natalie greeted him with her usual bright smile. "You're early. Everything okay? We need to talk. Privately." They went to the small office and back, and Damien's heart broke as he saw Natalie's expression shift from joy to concern to confusion as he explained. "My company acquired this building. I just found out. Natalie, I swear I didn't know. I never would have." "Get out," Natalie said quietly. "What?" "Get out," her voice rose. "You're telling me that while you were kissing me, dating me, telling me you love me, your company was planning to destroy my workplace, to tear down everything I care about?" "I didn't know," Damien repeated desperately. "I signed the budget, but I didn't review every property. I'll fix this. I'll find a solution." "How convenient that you're suddenly the hero," Natalie's eyes filled with tears. "You know what I think? I think you knew exactly what you were doing. I think you pursued me as some kind of sick game while planning to demolish Bruin Soul all along." "That's not true." "Then prove it," Natalie said. "Walk away from the deal. Save this building." "It's not that simple. There are investors, contracts, millions of dollars." "Of course. Money wins again. Get out, Damien. Get out and don't come back. We're done." "Natalie, please." "I said get out." Damien left, and through the office window he could see Natalie collapse into her chair, head in her hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. He had finally let someone in, finally allowed himself to be vulnerable in love. And in doing so, he had destroyed the one person who had made him feel human again. Redemption and new beginning. For 3 weeks, Damien barely slept. He reviewed contracts, consulted lawyers, met with board members. There had to be a solution that saved both the deal and the building, but every option required sacrifices he wasn't sure he could make. Finally, Damien made his decision. He sold his vacation properties, liquidated personal investments, and structured a buyout offer. He would purchase the building personally at above market value and lease it back to Bruin Soul's owner at reduced rates. It would cost him millions and strain his relationship with the board, but he didn't care. When the papers were finalized, Damien didn't deliver them himself. He had his lawyer present them to Natalie with a simple note. "I'm sorry. I should have fought harder from the beginning. The building is yours if you want it. No strings attached. All I want is for you to be happy." Natalie called him 3 hours later. Her voice was careful, guarded. "You bought the building?" "Yes." "And you're selling it to me for half of what you paid?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you were right," Damien said quietly. "Money shouldn't always win. And because losing you made me realize that no deal, no property, no amount of success matters if I've lost my humanity in the process. I resigned from the board, Natalie. I'm restructuring my entire company to focus on preservation and community development instead of demolition. You changed me. And even if you never forgive me, I needed you to know that." Silence stretched between them. Then, "I'm at the shop. Can you come here?" When Damien arrived, Natalie was waiting outside. She looked tired but beautiful, and when their eyes met, he saw something that made his heart stutter with hope. "You really quit," she said. "I really quit." "Because of me?" "Because of us," Damien corrected. "Because you showed me there's more to life than profit margins and quarterly returns. Because loving you made me want to be better." Natalie stepped closer. "I was so angry, not just about the building, but because I thought you had betrayed me, used me. I would never. I love you, Natalie. I've loved you since you made fun of my coffee order and forced me to eat maple bacon scones." She laughed, and it sounded like home. "I love you too. Even when you're an idiot who signs contracts without reading the fine print. I'm working on that." Natalie kissed him then, and it tasted like forgiveness and new beginnings. They stood there on the sidewalk outside Brew & Soul, holding each other while the city moved around them. 6 months later, Natalie opened an expanded cafe in the newly renovated building. Damien had insisted on funding renovations as an investor, and together they had created something beautiful. The grand opening featured local artists, live music, and more baked goods than one neighborhood could possibly consume. As the celebration wound down, Damien took Natalie's hand and led her to the small stage. Under the lights, in front of their friends and community, he got down on one knee. "Natalie Brooks, you gave me back my smile and my heart. You showed me that kindness isn't weakness and that love is worth any sacrifice. Will you marry me?" Through happy tears, Natalie said yes. And when they kissed, the entire cafe erupted in cheers. They married in the cafe's garden, surrounded by everyone who had watched their love story unfold. Tyler gave Natalie away, and Damien's eyes filled with tears as she walked towards him. They promised to love each other through challenges and triumphs, to build a life based on honesty and shared values. On their first anniversary, sitting in their favorite booth at Brew & Soul, Natalie reached across the table to take Damien's hand. "Remember when you walked in here all grumpy and serious?" "I remember you being incredibly inappropriate and forward," Damien replied, smiling. "And look at us now. I have my dream cafe, you have a company you're proud of, and we have each other." "Best coffee I ever bought," Damien said, pulling her in for a kiss. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside, Brew & Soul, two people who had found each other against all odds, held each other close, grateful for second chances and brave enough to fight for love again.